I'm gonna put you into the hot take machine here for a second, if you'll indulge me first. I feel like you are so tapped in, and I listened to you on the broadcast. I feel like you are very tapped into not just NBA basketball, but everything within the sort of ecosystem of NBA basketball, NBA Twitter, media, narratives, all of these things. And I don't know if you saw the clip, but it was, I believe it was in the conference finals. We were discussing whether or not a Miami-Denver series would be bad for the NBA. And look, I think there is a self-perpetuation that exists within the way we cover the NBA. And I recognize that it is a star-driven league and has been for decades. But I've also been told that the second we start talking about a team other than the Knicks, Celtics, Lakers, Warriors, whatever, the legacy franchises, that people turn the channel.
Right.
And to me, there's an element of, well, if you're 90% of your coverage focuses on 5 players and 90% of your coverage focuses on 10, five teams, then when you tell someone something's important, they're going to ignore it. Right. And that's kind of how we arrived at this Nikola Jokic stuff. I really believe that. Yep. It's also Mountain Time. It's a West Coast team that's not a legacy franchise. They're not getting a lot of Saturday primetime games at 8:30 during the season. And so a lot of the greatness around our league, I think, gets lost to the casual fan. And I don't mean casual fan in any sort of negative connotation. I recognize that people have a lot of interest. Not everyone's obsessed with the NBA. That's great. I was asked this and I provided a response, but I want to get your response. How can we, media, ESPN specifically, whatever you want to take it, how can we be better in our coverage of the NBA?
So one team in particular strikes me right now. It became pretty clear very early that Sacramento was going to have a hell of a season, and that watching De'Aaron Fox and Domas Sabonis do their thing, we needed to get them on. That was probably a shortcoming for us. And I always have this debate. I understand we are in the business of making money. Those are facts. And money equals ratings because that equals sales. I get all of that. But I also am somebody who grew up appointment viewing basketball, because when I was a kid, I grew up next door to a park, and I was either out doing it, and actually what I was doing was watching the college basketball game that was on at 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was always UCLA and Notre Dame or some, big time team like that. And then I'd go out to the park, I'd run between these hedges and be the star of the game that I just watched. But what Dave Gavitt did, Big East, and what, executives did at TV is they tell you who's important. They tell you who's important by who they put on. It's different now. You could turn on a game any of the week on 7 to 10 different channels, maybe more than that at this point. But I do believe we have some power to build stars, and it is our job. Like, one of our failures, I believe, is outside of people who do love the NBA, do people know that, one of the shooters in NBA history is Damian Lillard? Do people know that? Do enough people know how good Damian Lillard is? I don't believe that's the case. And it's frustrating. But I'm also not naive, JJ, right? This is the battle you have where women's sports are concerned, and the argument that women would make to you, it's, if you help us, we can get there. But there's the business side of, well, we need ratings and we need money. I thought in the women's NCAA tournament, I had more guy friends, and the same thing happened when Diana Taurasi was a player. And I said this because I'm very good friends with Holly and Rebecca and Ryan I've known now, and so appreciate how talented he is. I went to the Final Four for the first time as a fan this year, because usually I'm working now, and I called it for so many years. And we went out for a drink, and I said to all of them, I said, you guys realize that for the next week, because the numbers, the ratings told us this, the most compelling figure in basketball for 2 weeks was Caitlin Clark. Use that, build on that. And that was our responsibility. And look at the ratings of the women's Final Four, because, listen, when the NBA playoffs started, she was no longer the most compelling person. But you have these windows of opportunity to generate some momentum, and some of that is our responsibility. I don't have the executives balance at JJ. It's an age argument. You're asking a woman who would tell you that we're still not as far societally as where we should be, but we continue to make strides. So I don't know if I answered that the way you expected.
Well, no. I actually, it's funny because that was going to be a follow-up question. Because I do agree with you that the same complaints that I have through my lens about how we, again, not ESPN, just the media, about how we cover the NBA. Some of those complaints also hold water when I talk about women's sports, and specifically because I'm just partial, but specifically with the way we cover NCAA women's basketball or the WNBA. Now there's also more to the coverage on that. There's more to probably a level of misogyny that exists with the casual sports fan and how they view women's sports.
Right.
I don't know that we ever win that battle.
Yeah.
But a lot of the same issues. It's like you're right. We have the responsibility to promote the game. We have the responsibility to promote the personalities within the game.
Yes.
I think about my love of basketball and my love of playing. When I retired, I was like, I'm not going to watch the NBA this year. I'm going to take a break from basketball. And by the second week of the season, I was on, every league pass game, whatever. It's an obsession. And so how I view this now, whatever it is I decide to do for the next 30 years, whether it's coaching Knox and his 8 and 9-year-old team, or being in media, or maybe someday coaching the NBA, like I just view it as I'm a steward of this amazing game, and everyone who participates in it and is exceptional, I have a responsibility to promote them, to be a steward for them.
Tommy, me up, because one of my favorite things on Today, or Get Up If I Catch It, is that and JJ Redick absolutely losing their mind at the number of times they're forced to discuss one of those teams, that the aforementioned teams. I just die laughing.
It's amazing. I mean, I was gonna ask about. I think that the women's Final Four is a really interesting sort of topic to kind of delve into further, because JJ and I have talked about this, and we've talked about this with Sue and some of our other friends as well. It did feel like this was the first year in recent memory, at least, that there was way more buzz around the women's Final Four than the men's Final Four.
Yeah.
Both the Final Four games and the championship itself. And a lot of that is, I mean, the players are great, but also the personalities are great. I mean,
that's right.
Everything Angel was doing, everyone on that LSU team just had a level of swag it was probably the coolest thing in college sports this year, men or women overall. And that's always been a thing that the NBA has been great at, is this stuff, is not even necessarily like the off the court stuff as much as just like the pizzazz and the flair on the court. And so I mean, to sort of follow up on your point, Doris, is it the responsibility of the networks and the media and everything that to focus on these things that are existing in places outside of maybe just like LA and New York and highlight them, whether it is men or women? And I guess to your thing about Sacramento, I mean, like De'Aaron Fox is like a huge amount of swag. I mean, the guy led the league in clutch scoring. He's one of the most exciting guys to watch in all of sports. And so that is a failure on the media's part to highlight what he's doing. Like De'Aaron Fox is not boring in any way. Yeah. Jokic is not boring in any way. He makes these most insane passes. And so
but Tommy, are they compelling? Are they compelling?
Yeah. He's reminding me of one of the hardest lessons I had to learn as a broadcaster. And because this is, and it took Dick Vitale saying this to me, because I was a sideline on his team when JJ was in college. But I was also doing analyst work, and I obviously preferred that job to the sideline. Not that I loved every game. If they're tipping it up and I'm in some role, I feel pretty lucky to be there. But one of the hardest lessons I had to learn, and I think it was because I was covering men's college basketball as an analyst and then the NBA, and I always, in the back of my mind, was like, I know there's people who don't think I should be there, and I've got to prove myself. But I remember Dick saying to me, this is an entertainment medium, and people aren't tuning in to hear how smart you are about the game. They're tuning in because they either have an investment in one of their teams or because they're looking for some sort of diversion. or they're just a general sports fan, or maybe they're just a passionate NBA fan. And I was sitting beside my son one time. I think we were watching the Olympics. And he said something to me. I have a small den, and we were sort of close. And the announcers were laughing with one another, and they were having a really good time. And my son just sort of looked at me and he said, "Mom, what I think you fail to understand sometimes is that when you're having as a broadcaster, we're coming along with you. And you have to be able to do the basketball goods when necessary, right? You have to be, and it's the most high leverage. It's what makes, our lead team so good. But it is an entertainment medium, and it's why, Tommy, those players who have verve and personality and somehow capture your imagination makes a difference. And you make a great point. There were so many compelling women who, what I love about women of this generation is like, they're not afraid to be in your face. They're not afraid to be who they are. There's just a confidence about them that I really admire. And I just, know they're going places to where we probably haven't been before. So I love that stuff.